He's the McIntyre of McIntyre in the Morning. Love that promotion where you're getting up at 2:30.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's a beautiful
Good gig. Worked hard for that one.
It's on Talk Radio. You can hear it here on 790 KABC. A man bright enough, I guarantee you, they moved him into that drive time slot in the evening soon. Doug McIntyre. Dougie. All right, guys. Doug, I had another line of conversation. I want to talk to you something interesting you brought up during the break. I think will be a good point of departure here about the elections. You were maybe just goofing around, but you said you'll think that Hollywood will probably give Michael Moore the Oscar for Fahrenheit 9/11 now as a contentious gesture back towards
it's the spite return, hitting the ball over the net. But you know, my headline for this election is Mel Gibson beats Michael Moore. And I think that you can look at it that way, that Mel Gibson represented that billion-dollar box office of Christian evangelicals showed up and they voted, and you're seeing all of the tracking polls now. The post-game show is saying that those cultural issues mattered.
Now, Doug, you're well known for sucker punching your fans.
Oh,
Weigh in on this.
Well, I got to tell you, this might not be politically correct, but I thought it was the best thing to happen to the NBA in years. I mean, I'll tell you why. It's the most interesting thing to happen in a regular season NBA game in 12 years. It's a pituitary case with $1 million in the bank versus drunken louts. And so be it. Look, we're a crass society, and we all hate it. We are a crass society. But is it worse than people yelling nigger at Jackie Robinson? Is it worse than Ty Cobb sharpening his spikes and cutting guys up going into second base? The reality is that we get sued for looking at people the wrong way today, and this is the Romans and the Christians and the Lions. I mean, we've circled it. I hate it in this regard. You used to be able to take kids and go as kids to games. And the atmosphere now, the tickets cost $5,000 to sit in the court or whatever the hell they charge, and everybody's going to show how big their penis is with their clients, and it's become a totally unfriendly environment for kids, and I resent that.
No, fear trumps everything. He ran a campaign
well,
fear.
Everybody ran a campaign on fear. I mean, you know, the fear the Constitution's going to be flushed down the drain. John Ashcroft is Joe Goebbels. You know, I mean, everybody runs. Americans have always voted on fear or contempt for the other side. My guy might be a liar and a thief, but by God, he's a better liar and thief than your guy.
As a matter of fact, the parents can't sleep in the tent now because the 48-hour nonstop party that's going on everywhere.
My mother went on strike when I was about 13, 14 years old.
Wait a second, you have actual...
Yes, she refused. We didn't notice for
How
weeks.
old were you?
About 13, 14, she just stopped doing the laundry. My brother, my sister, and I, and all of a sudden, about 6 weeks in, I'm going to school in a tuxedo because it was the only thing that was clean. I realized, what's going on here? And there was a mountain of laundry in the basement, and she said, when we finally asked, she says, well, you know how to use the machine, and that was the end of it. We did the laundry.
Wow, and you know, when there's a mountain of 13-year-old boy laundry in the basement, that takes on a particularly...
The house went up like a crystal meth lab.
That is its own particular brand of nastiness.
What I mean by come together, Republicans should be Republicans, Democrats should be Democrats, battle it out in the arena of ideas. But this over-the-top vitriol, this ad hominem scum throwing at each other is really bad. This is what happened in the 1850s. We literally lost the ability to talk to each other as a nation. We went to war with ourselves, really went to war with each other, not rhetorically. Since Watergate, the other side isn't just wrong, they're indictable felons, and we want to send them all to jail. We did this through 8 years of Clinton. We've just been on an evisceration hunt with our politicians, and at some point, we have to take a step back and say, you know something? It's not that bad. If the other side was always wrong on every single issue, don't you think we would have figured it out by now? Don't you think the Democrats would have lost all the elections or the Republicans would lose all the elections? This is a country that sent a man to the moon. If one party was always wrong all the time, we would have figured it out. Maybe there's a middle ground here.
And here now with some more thoughts for tonight's Rorschach Extra. Let's go under the radar with our correspondent. Please give him a hand, Doug McIntyre, ladies and gentlemen. Dougie.
Dennis, this week on Under the Radar, we break out the old abacus to crunch some numbers on the national debt. Now, the numbers you see flying by faster than the price of unleaded self-serve are how much we owe as a nation. $7.3 trillion. Now, let's think about that number for a second. We're $7.3 trillion in the hole. That's 7.3 with 11 zeros. 7,3 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0. These are Carl Sagan numbers. They're the government's own numbers, and worse, they're our numbers because we have to pay off this staggering tab. And that's the ugly secret about our national spending orgy. We can't pay it off. It's impossible. So what we're really doing is sticking it to our kids and their kids and our kids' kids. Our two-party system has been throwing one hell of a party with our money, and we've been bellying up to the ultimate open bar. We're washing down free pills with tax cuts. We're paying farmers not to grow crops while we spend millions telling people not to smoke, only to pay tobacco growers to keep planting. We're laying out $50 million for an indoor rainforest for Iowa, and $2.5 million for a Gulf awareness program for St. Augustine, Florida, as if there's anything else to be aware of in St. Augustine, Florida. To show you how crazy federal spending has become under George Bush, John Kerry is running as the fiscal conservative. Now, in fairness, not all of the national debt is President Bush's fault. And there's 2 wars we have to pay for. But here's another budget secret. The wars aren't even in the budget. That's right. All those zeros don't even buy us a single shell casing. Now, I like tax cuts as much as the next guy, but you can't have tax cuts if you don't have spending cuts. So my advice is simple. Someone at the White House better find the pawn shop claim check for GWB's veto pen and send some pork back to the butcher shop we lovingly call Congress before John F. Kerry gets his hands on the national PIN number. Now, trillions aren't real numbers, but $2 billion a day in foreign borrowing is real. That's $14 billion a week we borrow from countries that don't like us just to keep the party going. But all parties end eventually. Sometimes they end with a handshake at the door, and sometimes they end with squad cars parked on the lawn and a sheriff's chopper hovering overhead as Dad's lazy boy bobs up and down in the pool. We're headed for one mother of a hangover from both political parties unless we stomp on the spending brake pedal, demand the truth from those who spend our money, and accept that nothing the government gives us is free. We're addicted to other people's money and need some time in spending rehab. Let's check ourselves in before the inescapable weight of financial gravity crushes down on our heavily subsidized skulls. Hey, let's check that tote board. Oh, look, Dennis, it's 7.4 trillion. I'm Doug McIntyre, and that's what's under the radar this week.
Dougie, I'm going to start with you on this steroid thing, because I think you might have pumped a few roids into your vein before you came tonight. You're all riled up.
I'm on the cream. I'm on the cream. Babe Ruth did it on beer and hot dogs. And that was his juice. But baseball is one of the last parts of American society where we actually venerate our history. If you transported somebody from the 19th century into our time, they would be horrified by most, but eventually when they got over the DH rule, they'd recognize baseball. And we actually teach our kids history. And the records matter, which is why we had the great debate over the 61 home runs with Maris. And to me, those are sacred, sacrosanct numbers, 755, 714. And I do think that it taints it. I mean, unfortunately, everything in America is on at least metaphorical steroids. Christmas is on steroids. It's shoved down our throats.
I saw Dean last night, and he looks so dissipated that he looks like he's married to Klaus von Bülow. What is keeping him... What is keeping him in and fueling this run to crash the plane onto the deck of the aircraft carrier? Is it just pure hatred for Kerry at this point?
Yeah, the guy went from the cover of Time and Newsweek in the same week. He sank faster than the Edmund Fitzgerald. He's got $10 million worth of yard cards to use up and a lease on the bus. So he might as well enjoy the ride, because when it's over, it's back to Vermont.
Yard cards. Beautiful, Mac. Good shot, baby. All right. Dougie, Bush this morning, yet again, going to the UN. You know what, I'd phone it in, quite frankly, at this point. I'd put a speakerphone up there and go, listen, I got to fake like I give it, you know.
He could send Will Ferrell, because they're not listening anyway. You see all the guys taking the translator headphones off saying, go ahead, talk to me, Bush. You know, they don't care. But the thing is, he has to make the case, and he is making the case, and there's truth in what he's saying. Look, whether you agree or disagree with going into Iraq, this has happened, and you can't leave a giant canker sore in the Middle East right now, which is what it is, if it's not contained and controlled. So the rest of the world, whether they wanted to support us with military troops, should at least pony up in whatever capacity they can to help bring stability to that country. Otherwise, you're going to create a gigantic Afghanistan. You're going to create a gigantic terrorist factory in a critical part of the world. That's what happened when the Soviet Union withdrew from Afghanistan 20 years ago, and the world yawned and moved on. Well, traditionally, you pick a vice president for two reasons. One, as Mickey said, to be the bomb thrower, and two, you look at electoral college math. I don't think that John Edwards has shown enough strength in the South to really be an asset to the ticket, and I think they need to win Florida. I think that they're going to talk to Bob Graham saying, look, you got a bad heart, Dick Cheney's got a bad heart, that's a push. Can you carry the state?
Joining us is our correspondent. Please welcome Doug McIntyre, ladies and gentlemen. Dougie.
Dennis, this week on Under the Radar, we recalibrate our oscilloscope to zero in on special interest money. Now, what is special interest money? Easy. It's any money that influences politicians that isn't your money. See, if it's your money, it's democracy in action. If it's someone else's money, it's a perversion of our process. Now, the Democrats bellyache about evil corporations and their cozy relationship with the Republicans. And the GOP thumps the tub about labor unions and trial lawyers picking up Ted Kennedy's Tanqueray tabs. So everyone points the finger, but frankly, it's the American people who are getting the finger. Case in point, California's Uber governor, Arnold. The governor mopped the floor with Gray Davis in the recall election because Arnold is rich and beholden to no one except Jay Leno and his 1970 steroid dealer. Yet last week, Arnold flew to the Republican convention. Now, the law says taxpayer money can't be spent on purely political trips. So Arnold's freight could have been paid for by the Bush campaign or Arnold's own campaign funds, or he could have pinched Maria's mad money from her Prada purse. Instead, Arnold made a cash grab from Pfizer, Time Warner, Chevron Texaco, Walt Disney Inc., and Outback Steakhouse, who apparently think Paul Hogan is governor. So the beholden-to-no-one governor is now beholden to a Jerry's Deli-like menu of companies that do business with California so he could blow $350,000 on a 5-day trip to New York. New York on $70K a day? That's Bill Bennett Vegas money. Hey, Arnold, ever heard of the Travelodge? $49.95 a night with free in-room coffee. Now, I don't mean to pick on Arnold specifically because I'm pretty sure he can kick my ass. And because the Democrats play the same rotten game. But Arnold's Big Apple adventure is symptomatic of what's wrong with our two-party system. Even if you go into office with Mother Teresa-like motives, you can't keep your hands clean. As long as we allow a gazillion dollars of special interest money to treat politicians like Caligula, we're going to get more government for, by, and about special interests. Now, I don't want to be a downer, and Dennis, you know me, I'm nothing if not about solutions. So here's a modest proposal. Let's require all elected officials to wear NASCAR-style jumpsuits plastered with the logos of their special interest benefactors. I mean, they'll still be bought and paid for, but at least this way we'll know who holds the receipt. Dennis, that's what's under the radar this week. I'm Doug McIntyre, and I endorse this message.